Want to make your corner lights work as the JDM gods intended? I have a plug and play option that can get these lights working like factory. I'm going to show you guys how to do it right now. There have been write-ups before on how to get the JDM corner lights to work like factory in your US car, but it's pretty complicated and pretty daunting. So my good friend Ben 10 Makes, who lives right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and also does a handful of handmade wood sculptures, which you should check out. Ben 10 has given me this prototype kit. In this kit, we have a sheet of instructions we're going to follow and critique for him. A PCB board, so this should be the brains behind getting these lights to work correctly. And it looks like we also have some female spade connectors and then some heat shrink butt connectors. Alright, so why don't we get started? Alright, so in a previous video, I made a how-to on how to wire these up to a US car. Right now with the headlights on, these corner lights on each side light up all the time. In our instruction sheet, Ben 10 gives us basically a function check at the end once we finish the install on how these lights are supposed to work from factory. So these clear corners normally are off. Turn signal on, this companion light should light up. When the hazard lights are turned on, both of those corner lights should light up. And with that being said, I'm excited for this plug and play option. So let's get these guys working correctly right now. If you're an Autohaus customer, you already know we got a new mini fridge stocked up with JDM drinks. It's Saturday and I am beat up tired from the work week, so we're gonna get our JDM corner light adventure started with some JDM coffee. Oh man, so good. Let's get started now. Alright, so in preparation to wire up the PCB board, because I know without getting too far ahead of ourselves, we gotta tap into the turn signal wire harness, I believe. Column, radio surround, and then lower finish panel. All this has to be removed. Yes, I know it's a rat's nest back there. I've owned this car for a long time. Please, you gotta cut 20-year-old Ezekiel some slack. 20-year-old Ezekiel was still wearing tall tees and a do-rag back when he did all this.
Lean with it, walk with it.
Alright, so the other thing we gotta do, take the front bumper off. I wanted to avoid having to remove the bumper, but I forgot that these kouki lights are held in by two 10s back here, and then they kind of secure back here with this tab too. A long time ago, put the US connector spliced into the harness for the original kouki lights. So Ben 10 suggests that this plug that's original to the kouki lights is actually the same for a cigarette lighter connector for 80s Toyotas. So unfortunately, this connector is no longer available, so you'll have to go to the scrapyard or something. In our instance, I have some generic weather pack connectors that I'm going to splice in on both the body side and the connector light side, so we have a regular 4-pin connector. And so previously, I believe I put running light and turn signal light. I spliced these two together and made it 1 pin. In this instance, we're going to run one dedicated wire for the corner light, and I believe the PCB board is going to control when these corner lights turn on. So we're gonna have one extra wire on both sides. We're gonna run that around the engine bay into the cabin. I'm gonna swap these over to my weather pack. After I do that, we'll be right back.
A few moments later.
Alright, so I have my generic 4-pin connector wired in. Normally, from the kouki lights, you would leave this connector side alone. And then as Ben 10 suggested, this is the side that would get cut off and you'd attach the 80s Toyota cigarette lighter connector to. You can see I use crimps and heat shrink for my connections. Again, this should be for the chassis side, but included in the kit are these heat shrink butt connectors. So you'd crimp both sides of the wire and then use your heat gun, and this will shrink down on both sides of the wires and protect and weatherproof your connection. All right, so we got our companion side wired up, and we also have a dog over here. What are you doing, dog? This one extra wire you see is very long. That's going to be our new corner light wire that the PCB board is going to connect or control. We're gonna need 2 of these, approximately 12 feet of wire. So 1 for each side. You can see the routing right there. So here, we're gonna go under the radiator supports, inside the fender well. There should be a plug right here, and then the rest of the wire should go into the cabin. All right, so I'm gonna route those wires in the engine bay into the cabin. Get some convoluted tubing over them. I don't want just bare wire in the engine bay. I'm gonna get this bumper on, and then we will make our way into the interior. I think one more big wiring thing, tapping into the turn signal stock. So let's get started.
A few minutes later.
All right, cool. Got both of the wires routed. I'll show you what I did. All right, so I noticed in the instructions, it's bare wire. Keep in mind, this is still a prototype. So basically what we're doing today is helping review the instructions and the kit today to see if everything makes sense, or, you know, throughout this process, I've actually been messaging Ben 10 about improvements to the instructions I think would be helpful to the end user. I've had a lot of problems with short to grounds installing aftermarket lights in the front. So I'm not gonna run bare wire. I'll show you guys what I did. If you notice, this wire will go up through the body. It's gonna be this right here. So I wrapped heat shrink throughout majority of the wire where I know it's gonna contact specific places, right? Like the parts of the body, upper radiator mounts. Here you can see I have this piece of heat shrink where both of the wires are gonna meet. And so the instructions want you to take this wheel off, run it through this fender hole inside the fender, and then there should be a grommet right there where we can poke through and route the wires into the body. All through this, I'm gonna have a piece of heat shrink around both wires so that at least there's some protection where these guys go through the fender. All right, so we're gonna get a long section of heat shrink on those two wires, route them through the fender, poke them through into the cabin. Once I have that done, I'll show you guys what it looks like inside the fender well. All right, well, cool, check it out. Got both these wires together. So let's take off this wheel and route this guy right now. All right, so we got our wire routed through the inner fender well, and then it goes through this body plug right here. It looks like at some other point I had something else running to the body, so I just ran my new wire through that convoluted tubing. If you have a virgin hole right there, I know it can be hard to find the hole with a virgin sometimes, so sticking it through can be kind of difficult. So one trick that I've used to stick the wires through like a body plug hole like that, you can grab a pick or a pencil, tape your two wires, or tape your wires around the pencil or pick in my case, and you can use the sharp edge to poke a hole through, and you should be able to see it on the other side, and then you can remove your pick or pencil, remove the tape off of it, and then pull your wires through. And so that'll ease putting the wires through as opposed to trying to like poke the wires and, you know, the wires bunch up. Taping it to something hard like this makes it a lot more simple to push your wires through a body plug like that. All right, so obviously we have this long thing of wires. Ben 10 still does not know where we want to put that PCB board or where we want to zip tie it up in the cabin. So he's asking us right now to choose an ideal location. What I'm trying to get at is anywhere we put it under the dash, it seems like this 12-foot length is still excessive. But that's totally fine. You can always cut off the excess, but the wire's not gonna grow back, right? So let's head over to the instructions and see what's next. It doesn't say it in the instructions, but you notice this kick panel to my left is, I removed it. I could not access the wires because that body plug, the kick panel blocks the body plug. So yeah, took off that kick panel. I would include that in the instructions too, that this guy should also be removed. All right, so inside the cabin, we're gonna jump around in the instructions a little bit. I don't quite have an ideal mounting location for the PCB board, and I think I'm gonna save that for last. Once I get the, what do they call it, lower finish panel back on, I'll have a better idea of where to put this guy. For example, you'd think there's room here, but actually the speaker goes there. But I know approximately where I want to put it, so I can approximate my wire lengths. You can see I already started connecting this guy, crimped on the provided connectors. I don't quite have the right crimp tool for those things. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Here's a better example of what I'm talking about. Like, how do you, like, what's the right tool to crimp this guy? All right, and then also, I wish we would have labeled left and right earlier, just so we could snap these in all the way. I have these partially connected so that when we actually use our turn signals, I can figure out, you know, if it's switched, then I'll just swap these guys. But would have been nice if the instructions told us ahead of time to label left and right. And again, these are for the left and right marker lights in the front that we ran the extra wire for. On to splicing into the turn signal stock. Measure and cut the length of wires that will reach the mounting PCB from the turn signal stock harness. I was worried about measuring wire lengths again, but it shouldn't be too bad. Again, we know it's going to be this area, so the length of wires just from there to there. So let's just call it between 6 to 10 inches. So we'll unbolt the 2 screws right there to get the turn signal stock connector removed and disconnected, and then we'll start cutting and splicing. So I got my lengths of wire prepared. We're gonna need 7 wires, and again, these 7 wires are going to go from our turn signal stock wire harness to the PCB board on our left. Except for the switch B+, later on in the instructions you'll see we're gonna take the switch B+ from the cigarette lighter, so the cigarette lighter all the way to our PCB board. I got these cut in about the same length, although I just realized our B+ wire is going to have to be longer going to the cigarette lighter. This kit does not come with wire. You'll have to procure that or buy it yourself. If you're wondering where I'm getting all this wire from, it's always helpful to keep old wire harnesses or, from previous projects, save all this wire, because this was somebody's previous wire harness project. All this wire is brand new still, so perfect for what we're doing today. We're going to start with J5 ground, just because that seems like a very simple one to start with. There's many ways. You see, we're gonna have to tap into the white with black tracer. Many ways to tap into this wire. Me and Ben 10 both agree we don't really like the vampire or T-taps, although yeah, you could use them. Here's one way you could do it. You can see I used a razor blade and cut open just a section of the insulation. I poked a sewing needle right through the middle and wheeled it up and down, opened up that hole so that I could poke my new wire through the middle. I'm just gonna wrap that wire around and then tape this guy back up. That's one safer way to tap into a wire. Again, not really a fan of those T-taps or vampire clamps because they can actually damage the strands inside. All right, so my J5 splice, that's what that's gonna look like. We're going to crimp on our connector. You can see as per instructions, I wrote J5 on that guy, and we're going to plug in J5 to the corresponding J5 section on the board. So rinse and repeat for the rest of these guys, except for this J7. It looks like we're going to splice one wire into another wire on the harness. All right, awesome. Got this guy wired in. We're going to clean up this mess later. And again, when we have the lower finish panel on, I'll find a good place to mount this guy. Those pink butt connectors are for splicing into the turn signal stock wires. The instructions want you to do switched B+ to the cigarette lighter. I actually chose to do this tap off the switch B+ on the radio. I thought that was actually easier, but switch B+, either one should be fine. Although that makes me wonder that if the hazards are on with the car off, like you're stuck on the side of the road, the corner lights will not be illuminated. So someone in the comments below, please let us know on a Japanese car, key off, do the corner lights illuminate? Because the way this is wired up right now, the corner lights are only gonna illuminate with the hazards on, with key on. Not a huge deal, but I'm just curious if that's how they operate OEM. So yeah, I'm excited as heck. Let's go try this guy out. There's a cool chart right here to tell us during what operation the corner light should be on. All right, awesome. So it looks like everything works as OEM. Again, the hazards with key off, please someone leave a comment below. That one's gonna be a mystery, not a huge deal, but still something I'd just like to personally find out. Pretty cool modern PCB board. Shout out again to Ben 10, privateer, just doing this on his free time. So convert these lights on a US car to work like the Japanese OEM does. These should be on his website, I believe, soon after we review this video. Ben's probably gonna make some more changes to the final public release product. But yeah, I'm excited as heck for this. You guys should be too. Make sure to check out Ben's website. I'll leave it in the description below. Finally, a plug and play solution.